Welcome to Contractor Cuts, where we cover the good, the bad, and the ugly of growing a successful contracting company.
Welcome to Contractor Cuts. My name is Clark Turner.
I'm Jared Flo.
Thank you for joining us again. So this week we are diving into how you need to be managing money on a weekly basis. Whether you are a one-man show or a $50 million a year company, how should you be looking at money day in, day out, weekly to manage it, to ensure that you're ahead of the game and ensure the money's there when you need it?
Yeah, you can't operate a business off the hope system. Well, I hope that I end up with enough money at the end of the day.
Or we'll see what's in the bank and we'll pay the guys out whatever's there.
Yeah,
right?
that works fine if you're just by yourself, but not when you've got your real bills to pay and all the stuff. Like you've got to actually focus on them, manage them, and know what to do with them.
I would also correct what you just said. That works fine as long as it's working fine.
Yeah, no doubt.
As soon as it doesn't work fine, then it's like, oh no, I'm gonna go get a loan shark to give me some cash. If you are, if you came on the retreat with us, you already have this paperwork where we walked everyone through it there, and we're going through it again right now to kind of show you how you should be looking at it. If you want the stuff we're talking about today, please go to ProShark360.com and contact us. We'd love to kind of talk you through it, give you some stuff, and kind of tell you about our coaching program and how we partner with contractors.
Yeah.
Where we are going to start today, though, on money management, the very first stop in how I'm looking at money weekly is projections.
I got to have information,
I need
data.
the information before I can know what I'm looking at. So everything we're talking about today, we're talking as an aspect of a general manager or owner of the company that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 PMs working for them.
Yeah.
If you are a one-man show doing your own project management and you're out there running jobs, listen to this, and all of the meetings we have is meetings you're having with yourself. The meetings we have is just getting the knowledge from your people. You already have this knowledge, so you're kind of skipping that part if you're a one-man show. If you're a 2+ person show, this is the way we want you to do it.
Yeah.
First off is we want to gather the information from everybody in the company, from all the project managers who know what's happening on each job.
And you should be on our software, which will help you gather this information.
Yeah, and so we have a weekly meeting we call a PAL meeting, and it's Project Manager Action List. That's PAL. That's where it came from. And what that is a general manager owner of the company sitting down every single week. We do it on Fridays with your project managers to go through a set list of questions to gather information about the job.
That's right.
Now, this is twofold. One, I need that information so I can make decisions as the manager of this company.
Yep.
2, this is where red flags start popping up with my project managers about their jobs, what's going on, the crew, money flow, and what's happening with the money going out that's not coming in. All of those flags are raised during these meetings.
Yep.
But in the meeting, we require our project managers to bring 2 pieces of information.
It's their homework. Yeah.
The first piece of information that you need to bring, outside of having your organized software checked and verified that it is all accurate, once you do that, we want our PMs to bring, number 1, projections for the month. Now, this is the biggest is for the first week.
Yeah.
Right. What do you think you're going to be invoicing this month? Let's look at your pipeline, look at your jobs that are open. I need you as my project manager to look at your projects that are on your plate and say, well, this one should be all the way through demo, so I should be able to invoice $20,000 on this job this month. How
much do you reasonably think you'll be able to close out by the end of the month, looking at your jobs, how they're going, and the status of them?
And so I need to know the projection of revenue for the month. I don't care as much about what I'm spending. That's more of the weekly, but I want to know how much you think you're going to be able to bring in revenue wise.
And that's a skill that will need to be honed in.
Yep.
Right. Nobody shows up day one with just perfect projections. It's a skill that you have to learn how to hone that in and really get into dialed in. I'm going to be pretty close to this number.
Well, and last podcast we talked through, you have to have organization to be able to do financials and your numbers. And so that's what we're talking about. The organization part of this is every project has a Gantt chart. You go in our software, when you're assigning out line items, it builds a timeline. And then you can go to the timeline and start moving stuff around and making it accurate.
Yeah.
And so then I've got a calendar view of exactly what's happening on this job. So if I've organized that and I've done that on a weekly basis, as a project manager, all I have to do is sit down, open up my job and look, okay, this month we should be to this, and so that's these line items that I should be able to invoice. Therefore, this job should get $30,000 of invoicing this month.
Yep.
Great. Next job. This job, we're going to be through this phase. That means I should be able to invoice 10 grand. Great. And so as a PM, I should, if I've organized my jobs and my timeline and communicated to my client when everything's happening on their job, because I'm organized, I then can sit down quickly, go through all my jobs and say, all right, this month I'm looking to invoice about $140,000 from these jobs. Mm-hmm. Great. I know that going into week one, that's what you think you can do. That's the first projection. Then the next projection is going to be what I should do this week. So from those numbers, it looks like I should have this. I'm going to send this invoice. And backing up a little bit, we do these meetings on Fridays, and we invoice on Tuesdays. So you should know by Friday what's going to be invoiced on Tuesday. We invoice it on Tuesday, and we collect it by Friday. So by next Friday, I will know that I collected and that those invoices were valid, and we collected that money. And we're almost done with the work week, the Wednesday to Tuesday. So by Tuesday, this is what I should. So your projections weekly should be very accurate.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's Friday, this stuff happened. That crew didn't show up, so we're not going to get to a spot where I can invoice that. So by Tuesday, I should be able to invoice $24,000 on all my jobs.
Yeah. Well, and one of the reasons and the importance why we started with PAL meetings and projections, if you've got a company that, a subscription company, and you have, you own a gym, right? And you have 1,000 people that have gym memberships, and they all pay you $10 a month, right? Every month, this is the amount of money that I have coming in. Here are my bills and my expenses, and that's good to go, right? In our industry, the incoming money is so random and so sporadic and can be delayed that I need to be able to manage my finances. I've got to get information on data from my boots on the ground. What can we realistically expect of incoming money this month?
Yep.
Just because I have $1 million worth of business going on right now doesn't mean that I'm going to be invoicing $250,000 every week. That's not the way it works. So I need to be able to have reasonable projections of when my money is going to come in so that I can manage the money. That's why we started here, because this industry, the incoming money is so sporadic.
Yeah.
You got to get a handle on it.
You can have 2 weeks with $0 invoiced and collected, and then the third week you got $280,000 because of how the phases work in construction.
That's right. So
understanding that is where we need to start, like you said. And also that weekly projection I'm looking at, and that's also going to be 1/4 usually, 1/4, 1/5 of the monthly projection.
Right.
And so if we get to the week 2 or week 3 of the month, and Jared had told me I'm going to do 140, and by week 3 he's invoiced 25,
something's off.
We got a flag. Why did you think you get 140? Because even if you invoice that big invoice next week for 75,
you're going to be at 50%.
You're going to be at 100,000 instead of 140. So where did we miss this? And so this is where I start coaching and honing in with my project manager. Hey, you keep sliding every single month because you have every single trade right up next to each other. Let's build in a day between trades for if this doesn't happen and goes an extra day, then my trade starts.
Well, and where this can help is it helps you determine the question, is this a projections issue? That he has a hard time with projections, or is this a project management issue?
Yep.
Right. If I go in there and I've got a project manager who's paid out $50,000 in materials and labor, but I'm not anywhere close to that number in my invoicing, we've got a problem.
Yep.
There's an issue on site that needs to be addressed. It's not a projections issue at that point.
Yep.
It's a project management issue.
So this meeting that should be 30 to 45 minutes with your PM. You're grabbing all of your financial data that you're going to use in a little bit to start managing the company and the cash flow. And you're also raising flags about performance, about crew performance, about customers dragging their feet performance. Really, this is kind of 3 birds with 1 stone, having them show up with projections, because there's an accountability point with it, as well as I know how to manage it, as B, and C being I'm raising these flags.
Yep.
So that's kind of the 3-pronged attack on why we want them to show up with projections, because I can look at all of that stuff and start honing in their skills as a PM and really starting to identify where I can help them grow, bring on new crews. Hey, you're not managing this way. You need to do this with your invoicing with your clients. And we can start really coaching them in those meetings as well as gathering this information.
Yep.
So I've sat down with Jared. I've sat down with Bob. I've sat down with Jim. We've got all of our projections down. As the GM, I'm sitting looking and saying, okay, so this week Jared's going to collect checks from these 2 clients for this amount, and I'm writing that down. Jim is going to collect 4 checks from these 4 clients, and Bob doesn't have any invoices that are going out next week. So I know that these 6 checks will be coming in next week. They are sure of it. And at the same time, weekly, who are you paying? How much are you going to be paying out on Tuesday? What does that look like? Because we send invoices and we create payments for vendors on Tuesday. We deliver payments on Friday, and we receive money by Friday. Right? And so that's our system. Everyone's got it different. We suggest it that way. We'll lay it all out calendar-wise why we do it that way. But for us, we're invoicing on Tuesday, and I want that money by Friday. And we invoice small amounts weekly to try and stay ahead of the customer as well as not get over our skis to where if a customer screws us, we're not screwed out of $80,000, I'm screwed out of $6,000.
Right.
Anyway, so now that I've gotten all this information, and I said Jared's invoicing these 2 jobs, and it's going to be $50,000 of invoicing for these 2 jobs combined. But on these jobs, he's got to spend $40,000 next week on bills. On he's got to buy the cabinets that we're invoicing for, and he's got to pay the demo crew.
So I got $10,000. I don't have 50.
Yes.
Right.
And so I write down in one column, this is how much he's collecting. And then over here on the other part of the spreadsheet is this is how much he's spending going to sub labor or materials. And I've got those line items. I go to the next guy. This is how much he's collecting. This is how much he's spending. So let's say Jared's at positive $10,000 net. Bob is a positive $10,000 net as well. We've got $20,000 coming in that is going to be profits.
Right.
I might have $80,000 being invoiced. $20,000 of that is profits. The other $60,000 are being spent. Right, so I'm looking at my spreadsheet. I can see what's going out and what's coming in. And what I like about identifying those 2 things is I'm not going to be buying the cabinets unless I can invoice for the cabinets.
Right.
So those are kind of tied together to where if I can't invoice by Tuesday, I'm not going to pay for the cabinets until I can invoice for them. And so that might push to next week, but also that's pushing those expenses the next week. The next part of this spreadsheet, and I know we're going to getting super technical, so please hit us up if you want this spreadsheet. We'd love to talk with you.
Right.
The next part of the spreadsheet is our bills. Every bill that is going to be spent on a monthly basis is on the spreadsheet.
All of the overhead expenses.
All of the overhead. So my payroll, I've got my rent, I've got insurance, I've got gas, I've got
utilities,
everything that I've line item on my P&L, my profit and loss statement. I've got line items also on here as money going out. I also have
credit card payments,
loan payments, full you might have a revolving credit line that has to be paid in full. So I know I got an $80,000 payment coming up at the end of the month.
Your Home Depot credit card, your Lowe's account.
Every dollar that's going to come out that isn't already classified as labor and materials.
And week over week, those may not be due on that week, but they're listed so that I can see is it due this week? Is it cash that I need?
Well, they're all listed, and then we have dates that they're due. And so we highlight on this tab of the spreadsheet, these are the 3 that have to get paid this week, and these other ones that were paid last week, so those are rolled off, and these are the ones coming up next week and the week after. So I can looking at this spreadsheet, I have to minimum pay these, and if I got extra money, this is what's due next week. Right, and so I can look at the spreadsheet and say, all right, I got a positive $20,000 coming in. I need to pay this, this, and this. Total of those expenses, because we don't have payroll, we don't have this other thing this week, I've got $8,000 going out. That being said, I've got a positive $12,000 for this week if we collect what we say we're going to invoice and pay out what we say we're going to pay. Now that I know that number, I've got $20,000, I'm now going to click over to the next tab in the spreadsheet and say, what's next week? Let me look at
what's coming next week.
What's next week, guys? And so I'm going to look at the bills that are coming up because a lot, like I said, the labor materials are tied to invoicing as well. So I'm not as concerned about that outside of, well, I invoiced cabinets this week and we got to pay it next week. Well, let's identify that. But I'm going to look and say, okay, next week we've got that big payment for Home Depot credit line. I got to pay $10,000 next week.
Also, all my payroll is coming out.
My payroll's coming out, whatever. So that $12,000 I'm going to leave in the account because next week I'm going to need it. I might move it over to next week's. Or let's say next week has $10,000 worth of bills.
Yeah.
I got 12,000 from this week positive. I want to win or break even every week. So what I'm going to do this week, I'm going to take $2,000 of that 12 and put it in the bank as profit. I'm going to take the 10,000 and roll it over for bills for next week.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm starting next week 10,000 up.
Yeah.
And that way, if I can collect more, I might that week take whatever I feel comfortable with and put it into the bank and roll the rest of it over to the following week.
Yeah.
So now I'm not just looking at making my bill payments this week, but also projecting the next week and even the third week ahead of me. And I'm starting to nesting some away into a bank account that is straight profit money. That is just my extra cash flow for in the future when I need it. So when I do have that week that is a negative $30,000 week because everything piled up, I got it stored away and I can handle
I've got some operating cash to handle that with.
So that's the weekly budgeting. That's what I'm looking at. And where guys mess this up is they're looking at invoice, not collected.
Yeah.
So a good example of this is if Jared says, "Well, I'm going to invoice $25,000 from this job," I'll say, "Great, are we getting that payment next week?" And he goes, "Well, no, that customer's out of town till the 1st."
Yeah.
All right, are they going to cut us a check? Can they wire us money? How's that going? Yeah, they'll cut us a check. Okay, then I'm not putting that on the tracker.
I can't spend an invoice.
An invoice doesn't help me. And that's guys that are living off their P&Ls, that's great for projections and looking at flags that you can't manage money from a profit and loss because a profit and loss shows the invoice and the money spent.
Yeah.
And in our industry, an invoice isn't collectible today often. And so that can really throw your numbers off like, oh, we've got $100,000 being invoiced this week.
Right.
Well, no one's going to pay that, so we don't have $100,000 to spend this week. So understanding that, what is collectible, what is going to be spent, and then what are my bills that I got to pay, is how we're looking at the money weekly. Now, our office manager does that, the majority of that, and brings it to the GM and says, okay, this is where we're at. This is what we got. So the GM can make the decisions based on those numbers. But that's the systematic way that we have it.
Let's push this payment. I'll place a phone call to them and say, hey, is it okay if I can push it till next week? Right? You can make those decisions once all that information is put in there.
And we're not that used to be done in my head, right? Back in the day, it was I know what's going out, I know what's going in. How much can we collect? Great, let's do that. And then when I stepped out and have an office manager managing the finances, the financial side, we had to put it into a system so they can do it the same way. And I know all I need are facts from that person. I need this, and this. Give me that data. And as the GM, I can spend 5 minutes making decisions as opposed to 3 hours figuring out where money is.
Well, when I was running that position for a short period of time, I called this process my ability to see, right? I can't see if I've got enough money. How do I, like, there was nothing that was telling me, do I have enough money to cover what's coming, right? And so there needed to be a way to organize it of, here's everything that is potentially going to that is either actual cash or going to become cash, and here's everything that is going out. And it's going to do the math on that, and at the bottom of this spreadsheet it says, I am positive or negative. Right? You can go deeper dive on it and add a line item in every week. I want to set $1,000 aside and factor that into your decisions.
Make it a bill. Put it in your bills.
That's right.
And the bill is savings payment. And so $1,000 this week I got to pay into savings somehow. Yeah.
But it's the complication is like the bills show up. And if you, a lot of guys, they look in their bank account, it's a $2,000 bill. And they look in their bank account and they're like, well, I've only got $800, but I know I've got a client pay me next week some point, right? So that thing goes into a pile and they'll wait for it. And then they roll around and they get that money in and they forget about it. And then they're reactive. They're being reactive in the way that the bills are coming. They pay bills when somebody tells them, hey, this is due, right? Versus taking ownership of it and saying, I need to have a plan for this so that I can organize my cash and I don't risk getting in the place where I can't pay my crews or I can't pay my employees, right? Like those are detrimental. If I can't pay my crews, they don't come back, right? They don't show up. If I can't pay my employees, like I've failed them. Like I have to be able to pay them. So I have to have a system of organization to be able to see how much money do I have, how much is coming in, how much is going out, and what decisions do I need to make sure I hit a 0 or higher at the end of every single week.
Yep.
Right.
Win the week, you're going to win the month, and you're going to win the year.
That's it.
That's what we're trying to do with that weekly money management, is being able to have a vision of what's happening, full vision without any surprises. And so part of that conversation too, if you're my project manager, we're talking about this, is when Jared says, I'm going to invoice $28,000 on Tuesday and I should collect that on Friday, Monday rolls around, he shows up on site, painters didn't do what they said they were going to do, and he can't invoice that. He's going to now call me because he knows I'm making financial decisions based on his promise of invoicing as my PM.
Right.
So Jared will call me on Monday and say, hey, man, the painting is not done. I said I was going to be able to invoice 28. I can't invoice that painting line. That was 8 of it, so it's only going to be 20.
Yeah.
But the good news is we don't have to pay the painters, so here's the adjustment to my numbers. Right? And so him notifying me about that allows me to say, okay, so we got to switch things around. We're going from 12,000 profit down to 9,000 profit. We got this going out. We have this happening. Great, we're good to go.
Right.
But he knows the importance of his job in the system, that he has promised to invoice this and collect it, and now he can't follow through with that. He's going to notify me and communicate that information.
Absolutely.
So that's how we're going to be managing the money weekly. Zooming out, and we're not going to go too deep into this, we're not using this method on a month-to-month basis outside of I'm looking at next month what's going in and I'm managing it weekly.
Yeah.
We want to switch over to the profit and loss reports and start looking at that to look more of a monthly picture. I want to go into our reporting in the software. We have our own set of reports that you can filter. But again, if you don't have the data of doing the jobs the right way,
it doesn't matter.
You're not going to have it.
Correct.
It doesn't. That's not going to help. So we want you to start at least with this weekly, and this is what I'm going to invoice. This is what I'm going to collect, and now I'm holding myself accountable to that invoicing and collections.
And the big thing when it comes to that, win this week.
Yeah.
Right. And then next week, win that week.
Yep.
Just that simple thing will help you roll towards success and health.
Well, it also goes along with when you're my project manager and you're calling me on Monday and say, hey, these painters aren't quite ready. And I say, well, if you can't invoice by Tuesday, tell them they're not getting paid.
Right.
Now we have an accountability system to where the crew's not like, well, I got rent, man. I got rent. You got to pay me. You knew that this had to be done by Tuesday, and we're making moves where we don't have cash to pay you.
Right.
I can't collect on this.
Yeah.
And that's legit. I don't care if I've got $500,000 in the bank. I can't pay you because I don't have the money because I can't collect on what you're doing to pay you with what you're doing.
Right.
I'm going to spend the money from this job on this job. I'm not going to steal from my profits from last job. This is this job.
That's right.
So it allows the crew accountability, the PM accountability, and then also no surprises that are waking you up at 1 a.m. wondering, oh, crap, I didn't do this.
Yep.
Right? We're getting rid of all that. That's it. That is how we look at money weekly. If you want this spreadsheet, if you want to talk with us, you want to figure out how to start implementing this in your company, please reach out. We love chatting with people. We did a Zoom the other week with a company that isn't in coaching. We spent a couple hours with them just to help them out, and they were in the software and wanted to help them. And maybe they're a future coaching client, maybe they're not. But for us, we know that we are trying to build a long-term relationship with every contractor to where we can support you where you need it, and you can run on your own where you don't. And we don't mind giving around that. Because
absolutely.
It's a long-term vision for us. So thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next time.
See ya.
Bye.